Alrighty guys, it is Quad Man here today, and I'm bringing you another Dragon Ball Super reaction. And as always, if you guys have not caught up to Dragon Ball Super episode 128, this video will contain spoilers, even though if you saw episode 127 and you know the title for episode 128, Toei and Dragon Ball Super kind of already spoiled the major event of this episode in the title itself. But that's besides the fact. If you don't want to get spoiled, I suggest you tune off this video. So, now that we got all that stuff out of the way, let's get straight into this conversation. So guys, this was one of the best episodes of the Tournament of Power. I wouldn't say the best, but just from my reaction to this, guys, I feel like this was probably one of the most memorable episodes that Dragon Ball has ever had. And it would honestly make sense when you consider the fact that, you know, Super is kind of nearing its finale, or you should already say we're already in its finale right now, so obviously they have to wrap up and have a lot of climactic events. And in the previous episode, we saw Android 17 give his life to protect Goku and Vegeta, and in this case, Vegeta gave his spot up in the Tournament of Power, gave up the last remaining energy he had, so that Goku can continue fighting. And although Frieza's in hiding, and we'll talk about that more so later on in this reaction, I do want to point out and say that when we look at Vegeta throughout this episode, guys, I've never had as much respect for Vegeta as I had in this episode. And Vegeta has had a lot of prideful moments throughout Dragon Ball history. I mean, you gotta consider this, guys. Out of the main cast of Dragon Ball characters, since Dragon Ball Z, if you don't count Goku, because since he's the main character, he's essentially involved in every major fight, Vegeta has gotten his tail kicked more than anybody else in the franchise. And I know that that's very debatable. Piccolo's gotten wrecked, Gohan's gotten wrecked at times. You know, Goku obviously has arguably gotten wrecked the most because he's been the main character of the entire franchise. So if you include Ball, Z, GT, and Super, Goku's obviously gotten wrecked the most in terms of total time. But if you think about it, like, Vegeta has probably had the most memorable beatdowns throughout Dragon Ball history, guys. I mean, you go straight to the Frieza arc, in which, you know, Frieza just literally killed Vegeta, beat him to his life, you know, ate a crab on his shoulder in the anime adaptation, shot a beam through his chest. Like, Vegeta was torched. And then when you go to the Android arc, I mean, my goodness, you want to start off with, you know, getting both your arms broken by 18, getting knocked out by Cell twice. You know, then you go on to the Buu Saga, where we have one of the most iconic Vegeta moments, which is actually the most similar to this episode, where Vegeta fought against Kid Buu. And to tell you guys the honest truth, out of all of the Vegeta beatdowns I've witnessed, even including GT when he was getting wrecked by Super 17, I think that this episode specifically reminded me the most of the Kid Buu fight. And there are a lot of key reasons as to why. Well, first of all, one of the key reasons is that throughout multiple parts of the Kid Buu fight, if you include the anime, because the manga kind of sped through it a lot more, there were moments where Goku ran out of energy and Vegeta had to kind of hold the fort while Goku had to regain his ability to fight against Kid Buu. And in that fight, if you guys remember, it seemed at first that, you know, Vegeta was going all out on the offensive. He was, you know, punching Kid Buu. You thought, okay, maybe Vegeta could hold out for a minute. But then Jiren, similar to Kid Buu, just easily just defeated him. And you know throughout the entire fight that Vegeta never really stood a chance. But you gained respect for him because he was going into a losing battle and still giving it everything he had. But the biggest difference between that part of the Buu Saga and comparing that to what happened in Dragon Ball Super would obviously have to be the fact that Vegeta did not have Super Saiyan Blue. He didn't even have the energy to go into his max form. So you're seeing Vegeta trying his absolute best with an extremely limited amount of power, and that really made the stakes a lot better in this case, because you're literally seeing a base form Vegeta going up against the strongest character we've ever seen Goku and his friends face, unless you want to argue Merge Zamasu, but that's obviously another case here. And looking at it from that point of view, guys, that really made me respect Vegeta a lot more than I have in years past. And, you know, when you combine some of the more emotional moments, like, you know, Vegeta obviously seeing Bulma and Kid Trunks and his family and his visions, it really made you realize that, like, this is a Vegeta who's even more of a family man than he was, you know, during the Buu Saga. Because if you guys remember, although Vegeta was a family man in the Buu Saga, you know, he had his dirty deeds, you know, when he went back into being possessed by Babidi, he killed all those people at the tournament, you know, he did all of that so that he could fight Goku again and to regain that evil within his heart. So, you know, when he originally sacrificed himself, it's sort of like Vegeta was redeeming himself for those bad actions, but this was already a Vegeta who'd already redeemed himself, and even in that situation, you know, you see how hard he's willing to fight to preserve his pride, you know, to try and help Universe 7 win, and I felt that that was very honorable. And to tell you guys the truth, it was very hard to watch this scene. Not because it was graphic, because in the past we've seen much more graphic moments with Vegeta, with Omega Shenron impaling his arm, or, you know, Kid Buu blasting his face, like, or Vegeta getting wrecked by Raccoon. There have been more graphic moments of Vegeta losing, but what made this sad is that it was just arguably the most helpless Vegeta fight we've probably seen in a while. And throughout the entire thing, it just broke it down more when you saw how Vegeta effortlessly lost when Jiren just blew him out of the ring. And you see Vegeta in the loser's corner hanging out with Gohan and Krillin and stuff, and, you know, it just kind of struck me. It's like, here Vegeta is on the loser's corner, and you're saying to yourself, like, Vegeta doesn't belong here, man. And Vegeta's one of my favorite characters throughout Dragon Ball. And seeing him with all of the losers, you really can read in his mind, it's like, I shouldn't be here. Like, I should still be fighting with Goku. And here I am, jobbing for Goku to beat Jiren for the 10 millionth time that everybody saw coming, because Dragon Ball always repeats itself. And as Dragon Ball always repeats itself, Vegeta always has to lose so that Goku puts up a better fight against the main character that they're facing. So obviously, Vegeta had a very, very, very deep moment in this episode, and I thought the writing was well in executing that with all of its flashbacks. But if we have to talk about Goku now, guys, man oh man, this was epic. So, in a similar way to Vegeta, Goku started off fighting Jiren even with the limited energy that Vegeta gave him, plus whatever energy he still had left. And you saw that very similar to Yu Yu Hakusho when, you know, Yusuke was getting wrecked by Jiren, and in a lot of other anime series where you see the protagonist just losing, it seems completely helpless. Goku was getting wrecked the same way that Vegeta was, and Goku wasn't even strong enough to really power up fully himself. He used Super Saiyan Blue for a limited point of time, and he too was just fighting in his base form. So you know that Goku really didn't stand a chance. And then when you see Goku seeing everybody counting on him the same way that we'd seen in the past, it actually reminded me of Dragon Ball GT, where Baby Vegeta, and I know a lot of you hate GT, but there was that scene where Baby shot that revenge dent ball at Goku, and then Goku started seeing the visions of everybody who, you know, really trusted him, and he's like, I have to fight for my friends. And you see how in those moments Goku always rises to the surface, the same way in Battle of Gods where you see Goku fighting against Beerus and he, you know, he holds back that massive attack. So, you know, seeing Goku and all of his visions into going back into his Ultra Instinct form was excellently executed. And if I want to add a little bit of my twist here, guys, I gotta say, the Ultra Instinct theme that I'm probably playing right now for you guys to listen to, it's referred to as Clash of the Gods, and I think that song is one of the best songs in Dragon Ball Super. It's personally my favorite song. I use a variant of it for my outro, and I feel like whenever you hear that moment, it's like, uh-oh, like, Goku's coming, man. And seeing, like, you know, Jiren throwing that blasted, you know, Jiren, like, throwing those punches at Goku, and Goku just dodges and gives him that gut punch. And you know in Dragon Ball, whenever a character gives you that gut punch, that really tells you, like, the battle is now changing, like the tide has turned, because that's the biggest blow we'd seen somebody give Jiren. Now obviously Vegeta got a big blow on Jiren earlier, but it didn't have the same impact of seeing, you know, Jiren spitting up all of that spit, and, you know, his eyes are so dilated. Like, that was like the best blow somebody had given Jiren, and seeing how cool Goku was without any reaction, without saying anything, no emotion. It was just a cold-blooded punch, and the music was just so fitting for that moment, guys. And to tell you guys the honest truth, seeing the episode go from being so helpless at the beginning to being, you know, so, you know, filled with hope near the end was one of the best things I think this episode executed for its audience. And if there was one more thing I wanted to mention really briefly, guys, I gotta talk about Frieza, because, I mean, he's still technically in the Tournament of Power, and, you know, You gotta think, if Goku's getting a new form, and that's not really a spoiler because the preview showed Goku getting this mastered Ultra Instinct state, that essentially tells us all, guys, that, you know, Goku still needs to tap into even more power to fight against Jiren. But where does Frieza fit into all of this? Because obviously it probably couldn't be enough, because the show is intentionally keeping Frieza around. They want Frieza to be in the Tournament of Power, which makes me believe that there's still that final moment that I think Frieza's going to do something major to turn the tide in this entire bout in terms of what eventually happens throughout the entire Tournament of Power finale. But ultimately, guys, that's all I have to say about my reaction to episode 128. I want to hear all of your thoughts about, you know, some of your initial thoughts watching this episode. And to tell you guys the truth, watching this episode subbed gave me a completely different feel from when I originally saw it raw. And seeing all of the different dialogue points really added to, you know, the Saiyan pride being felt with both Goku and Vegeta. So with everything else said, please remember to rate, comment, and subscribe. And remember, as I always say, to have a great day, guys.